in Latin America, being in 2015, raising a fund, a venture capital fund that is EWA Capital, was something that, people didn't understand. So I spent it like 2 hours, trying to explain the thesis, the investment thesis, and the people didn't get it. So as I mentioned, like in Latin America, in venture capital, we are like three. So I was thinking like, wow, I mean, like it's like a gap all around. Women are like, oh no, be careful that you fall down. Men, it doesn't matter if you fall down. You fall down, you stand up, go ahead. So since you're a kid, they're telling you like, be careful. This is like the first time that I was in a board of directors and no one was listening to me. And I had to start shouting. And they were like, or men. And they were like, okay, she's here like, for the picture. As I normally say, like, okay, yes, we need a woman in the board, so she's for the picture. And you're like, no, I'm not for the picture. I'm here to give my point.
Welcome everyone. My guest for today is Patricia Saenz. She is the founder and managing partner of EWA Capital, a regional VC fund with a gender-smart approach which is committed to narrowing the gender equality in the Colombian region. With over 15 years of experience as an entrepreneur and investor, she has staged more than $60 million of foreign investments in Colombia. Patricia helps entrepreneurs and businesses achieve their goals by providing them with necessary capital, expertise, and support. I enjoyed my conversation with Patricia as she spoke to me of how she evaluates founders and how she funds them. I hope you enjoy watching our chat. Welcome to our series, and very happy to have you. And want to know that how you started your journey as a woman in the career of investing, especially knowing the fact that you have been into the world of investing since a lot of years, and you have a view of how women come in larger numbers at the entry level, but the level significantly drops down as we move up the ladder. So, what is it really that makes women drop down, and is it really a male dominated industry as it is perceived to be? What are your views on that, since you are already at the leadership level, and how are you promoting gender diversity with your fund?
So, well, now thank you very much for having me here. First, I will tell you like how we started this. I started in 2015. Of course, I also consider myself an entrepreneur because in Latin America, being in 2015, raising a fund, a venture capital fund that is EWA Capital, was something that people didn't understand. So it was like, what is what you're going to do? So I spent it like 2 hours, trying to explain the thesis, the investment thesis, and the people didn't get it. Most of the people didn't get it, and other things is like uh, in venture capital and all in private equity, most of the funds they struggle to raise the first fund because of the lack of track record. So
Mhm.
when you are like in your first fund, it's like, okay, you have been investing. I have been investing all my life, but it was absolutely different. It was not like as a fund manager. So they're like, oh, first time fund manager is like red flag, emerging market, red flag. So it was like red flag, red flag, red flag. So let's stop. So, but we saw a great opportunity in Latin America at that moment because, like internet access, because of smartphone access, and the technological gap was not as huge as it was before. So that's one of the reasons why we decided to start in 2015 the first venture capital fund. It was a microfund, as I mentioned, because of the difficulties that we had in the raising capital, but it was a very successful one. So it was small but very successful. We did already an exit last year, and with that exit, we returned the whole fund. So it has incredible numbers. And we saw that in Latin America, we really have this opportunity of amazing entrepreneurs that are solving our socioeconomic problems, and that it's really like, a challenging and helping the economy in all areas. So that's how we started in 2015. In 2019, we finished that fund, like investing that fund. That fund is closed. So we're like more in the exit side of the fund, and we started the new fund. And with EWA, we started to think about like, okay, I started to read a lot, like what you were mentioning, like woman, and like the figure that we have all fresh in our mind is 2% of the capital in the US venture capital goes to women entrepreneurs. So if that happens in the US, I don't know the numbers in the rest of the world, because it's like already like, well, that's the US. You can
Yeah.
just make up your idea about what happens in the rest of the world. So what could we do about that? And I started to read and to understand, and it's not only in entrepreneur. It's also, I can tell you, like fund managers as me in Latin America, we are only three. And when I said like me, is because I founded the company and I'm like the decision taker of the company. So
Yeah.
it's clear, like most of the companies, I bring in women in the team. And of course we're seeing that like most like investment bankers and because of the financial industry, we see like it's like lead by men, and it has been always like that. So they are started to bring people to the team, but it's not that many women that are like leaders of the team. So as I mentioned, like in Latin America, in venture capital, we are like three: one in Mexico, one in well, one in Brazil, and me in Colombia. So I was thinking like, wow, I mean, like it's like a gap all around, like as fund managers. Then when you look at the startups, you start to figure out, and I want to make like a point there that happens, like what I was telling you, like the three in Latin America, it's happening also very few worldwide. No, I'm part of one of the groups in the US, and they are like starting too. But it's like if you compare it with the others, or if you think about it, how many of these huge venture capital companies in the US are led by women, I'm sure
Very.
like you won't find any.
Yeah.
So we decided like, okay, so lead by women as a fund, those are the things that you start to read and probably put on papers from IFC and all these institutional investors, saying like, okay, the more women that you bring to the table, probably the less biased that they are, like at the moment that make the decision. Because everything like us investing is not only numbers, it's also about chemistry, so probably you feel like more like a familiar with someone that do the things exactly like you, and that's based on human, no? Like if you and me, we go and do yoga, and we have kids, and the kids go to the same school, and we do exactly the same things. Well, when you come and do a pitch to me, we will be absolutely more familiar than if someone comes here and is nothing in common. So that happened to women. I mean,
Mhm.
when the decision is made by men, well, they go, and they in Colombia they go play soccer, they go cycling, they go running, they do marathons. So it's like if you're in that and you go to that club, and are you married or not married? So it's pretty difficult. So we decide like, okay, what can we do in that term? So I saw that we were like invisible in all the stages, as fund managers, as entrepreneurs. And also, this was very interesting, but we need more women that invest in funds like EWA, because that also happens. So if you think about, like I was telling you, like, okay,
Your screen is
that part.
frozen.
First,
Sorry, I'm not able to hear you. Hello. Hi, there was some network issue, I think.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, no
Uh,
worries.
where were you?
Yeah, I heard last about the females being less in the US and the Colombian space, and that's because of the less social network that they have, and they don't go out much often. And you give me an example of the yoga teacher.
E- exactly. So what we started to do is like, okay, so what can we do for that? So first, we need more female founders in terms of like decision makers in terms of the investment manager team. That's absolutely something that we need, and I think like that it's happening. As I mentioned, like most of the teams, they are like increasing the the gender lens in their team, which is very important. Then we started to think like, okay, so what can we do in our investment thesis? So we decided to do like first, like um, 40% of the fund will be invested where women are lead, are like founders or co-founders, meaning like they have to have a big, well, an important participation in the team, or where women are in the C level, or where women are like end customers. So that's 40% of the portfolio, because what we saw also is like most of the teams are, when you mention like, oh, women as as founders, as only founders, there are not many startups that are based on technology, um, done by women, so like the numbers, I think like, yes, the numbers are critical, but we should double click in the numbers too, because at least in Latin America, when you see like, okay, 100% funded by women, most of the startups are not technological based. Most of the startups are more like, designers,
Mm.
jewelry designers, or
Healthcare.
clothing, or so those are like kind of entrepreneurships that are not like according to our investment thesis.
Mhm.
So it's not like we don't want to give the money, it's we're not fit.
Yeah, but
So
is there any pool
that's
available
why,
for this kind of people who are in other domains?
yeah, I mean like that happens all the time. So that's basically what we saw. And then we decided to do like, okay, we're going to do the in all our companies, our portfolio companies, a gender audit. And this is more like, I also think like in Latin America at least, most of the founders are like white, well educated, uh, so they have never realized about the gender gap, so they are like not even aware about that. And that could happen a lot around the world. And that's when I say like the men, they don't do it like because they are bad. I said like they are doing it because, I mean, no one has showed him anything like that. So you have to start to talk to him about that. Like you have to start to talk to him like, hey, there is a gap salary. And I had one of my companies like, where we participate in the fund one, and they were saying like, ah, Patricia, but the women are like cheaper. And I'm like, no, that's called gender gap, uh, salary gap. Like in terms like, that's something that shouldn't happen in a company. I mean, at the end, is like, if someone it has the same profile, someone has the same education, someone has, so the salary should be like exactly the same for everyone. So we have to start like doing this, and not because I didn't ask for what you were expecting. So I will be cheaper and I will be lower than someone that comes and asks for, I don't know, here they ask for car, for club, for insurance, medical insurance. So many things that probably is not like the salary, like the money, but at the end, there is a gap. And so what we started to figure out is like, okay, let's make them realize about that and how, like we can create like really something like all the people in the company has the same opportunity in terms of like achieving their goals. Then the second part is like empowerment, because like women, we do not believe in ourselves as we should. And that happens. I mean, like from our background, since you are like born, I don't know, you have like the family is your responsibility and your solely responsibility. And
Yeah.
that's something that we have to change, because and normally it's created because the man, your husband or partner, uh, earn more money, so his job is more important for the family than your job. So your job is like a secondary job. So basically you have to do everything at home. So that's something that you also have to create, like change the chip. And if you want to achieve, and so we work on that too. And that's basically what we're doing to promote more and to talk to people and to make them realize about how important this is. Because when you think about like, okay, all these SDG goals that we have, if we think about really like what happened in the world, the part of the gender equality is something that is easier for all of us to achieve if we are all like, if we really want to do it. So it's by far easier than eliminating poverty in the world, or you know what I mean. So it's
Yeah.
like something that we have to start with the companies, with the people, with the education of your kids. So and then the impact that it will have worldwide will be incredible.
Yeah, you mentioned a very nice point also, where you said that it's not like the capital is not going to the women founders, just that the investment thesis basis which the funds are built don't have that sector in which most of the women are. Which brings me to the question that why don't we see more women in tech sector? Why is it that it's heavily male dominated, both from the investor side and the founder side?
Yeah, and that is a shame. And that I also think like what we have seen is like all this technological boom has increased the gender gap. And just as you mentioned. And I think also like the reason for that is something that we have to change. I mean, women normally, and that's based normally are like, oh, we're not as good as men in mathematics. We're not as good as men in physics. We're not as good as men in chemistry. And then it's when the women normally go to to more like this services career. Uh, and that's something like we are like trying like with many of the companies and from school, from university, trying to promote more and more. Because at least in Latin America, what we have seen is like they do not start that many engineers in that terms, like software development and all that part. What we see in Europe is they start and they are like the best. But then when they have a family, they stop. So two of those things are like part of what I was mentioning to you, like the part of empowerment.
Yeah.
Because since the beginning, you start to think like, oh no, I'm not that good in math as men are. Then you're not going to do something because you're not as good and you don't want to fail. So, and that's something. So, based on that, we have created boot camps and we're trying to talk to schools and all that part to bring more women in that part, like what we call STEM. Well, worldwide it's called STEM, and we need that
Yeah,
definitely.
this is interesting. So, what kind of programs do you have, if you could just elaborate on those?
Well, we are like not ready EWA as itself, but we help them to do it. And for example, in terms of incubators, there is a company that it's called, that it's here in Latin America, are like three. And what they are trying to promote is like, like the same things that you have seen like in platforms, like technological platforms that teach all the people to do coding and software development and digital marketing and all that things like the companies are requiring, just to do it with women in a way that they feel like in a safe place and they can start like doing it. We are like, the other day I saw like also like at schools they are trying to introduce them to this. So it's not like rocket science. It's not like something like you are not going to understand, that you really have to be super clever to do it. No, I mean you have to be good as in any other job. I mean you have to understand and you have to be good. But it's something that we really have to create, because it's really it's creating this gap.
Yeah, you mentioned that it's only for women to create a safe space. Why is it that sometimes women are hesitant to ask questions when men are also around in the same room? Or why do they have this fear of being perceived as stupid? Why that doubt?
I don't know. I think like we're less riskier, and those are one of the things that we normally see from women. I mean, like each one, and there are many things. I can give you an example in terms of when you hire, when you ask for a job. More of the women, they only apply for the job if they accomplish more than 90% of the requirements. Men, they go for it if they where they have 50%, and
Yeah.
normally they say like, okay, I mean, I will do it and I will earn the other 50% if they get me the job. So those are the things. I mean, like we are really perfectionists. We don't want to make like stupid things. We are like very like so those are like the reasons that afraid to ask, afraid to participate. Um, you only will be in a job if you really accomplish what they are asking for. um Pretty much like, I don't know why, insecure about like, oh, do I am like as good as I should be for this or not. So and those are like the things that I was telling you about, like the empowerment, and the empowerment to talk with role with example. Like in my case, I normally say like, hey, I have two kids, I'm married, and probably I'm not the best mother at school. Well, but that's what you get,
Yeah.
because I cannot be like 100% at school as other mothers are.
Mm.
But I'm so happy being at my job, and probably I'm teaching my kids another thing absolutely different. That it's like being like, like in the having a job, being independent, being able to roll your own company. So those are the things, and in life you have a trade-off. You cannot
Yeah.
have everything, so you just have to decide what's the trade-off that you have to give up, because that's life.
Yeah, one study was also saying, in fact, by Harvard itself, that if you ask to rate yourself, a male would rate themselves as 9 on 10, and a female would always say 6 or 7 on 10. So that apprehension always is there in the mind that, okay, I can't be 10 on 10 at all. But do you think this stems more from the societies that you are brought about in, or it really is just a function of the peers that you have in your schools or colleges that really make you think in this way?
I think it has to be with well, I would say like how they raise you up, because at least, and I think about like, okay, for example, and someone told me something interesting 2 weeks ago that I never realized that. And for example, I will tell you, in Latin America, women are like, oh no, be careful that you fall down. Men, it doesn't matter if you fall down. You fall down, you stand up, go ahead. So since you're a kid, they are telling you like, be careful.
Yeah.
So when they keep telling you be careful, then you're not willing to take the risk. No, so it's kind of things that I have realized. And then someone that I met from Russia 2 weeks ago, she was telling me like, oh, but your point is something that will apply in the capitalist world, but not, for example, for me, because here, well, in Russia or before, it was like the job is there, and who has to do the job, let's do the job. They didn't differentiate between men and women. And that catch my attention pretty much, like, yes, probably that part is interesting in what they created. So for us, I believe like we are more like, okay, be careful, uh, what you talk. Women shouldn't talk like this. So it's everything like they created the differentiation between men and women. And then if they are telling you all that, well, probably that's one of the reasons why we are like more like, okay, behind. If someone is talking in a room, probably you let the guy talk first and then you make a point. Or how I always realized is that, and I started to realize this is like the first time that I was in a board of directors and no one was listening to me. And I had to start shouting. And they were like, or men, because they were like best friends, they were like in the same, like everything that I was telling you. And they were like, okay, she's here, like, for the picture, as I normally say, like, okay, yes, we need a woman in the board, so she's for the picture. And you're like, no, I'm not for the picture, I'm here to give my point. So and those things that you have to make them aware about that.
Yeah. I mean, this is very surprising to hear that it still happens. Which year was this when this happened with you?
Yeah, but it happens all around. I mean, like, and I'm not only the one. It happens to a lot of people, and especially I think, like, of course it's changing a lot.
Yeah.
But normally when I go somewhere, well, like most men, they are like 20 or 10 years older than me, so they are like from another cohort. We call it like generation, no? So and they are not aware, as I mentioned to you. Like most of them, they are not aware.
Yeah.
They do not realize what we are talking about.
Right, right. But I think more awareness can come from stories like this where women openly speak about it, and that other women also get aware, okay, this is something that still happens and we need to, be cautious of it. We need to be able to fight it out. But, there are not many women seen at the level that you are in. And I'm sure that they made a trade off maybe differently, or there could be some other reasons also. So, what was it like for you while you were growing up the career trajectory? Did you face any challenges? Were you surrounded by, men in a in a room where decisions were made? Were you not being heard? How did you really overcome those and stand where you are today?
But I think like the first part is like I was raised. Well, my family is my father is a businessman, so he always, I mean, invited me to the board of directors of the companies that he was having. He trusted me. We worked together, so I never feel that not being part. So that's one of the things that I think like it's like the difference as I was raised. Um, and then also my school. I went to a German school, and the school is a huge school, and you are a number. So I think like that's another thing. Like you realize that, okay, when you are a number, it's like they are not like saying like, "Oh, come here, you're pretty." No, it's more like you are a number and figure out how to do it. So I think like those are like the couple of things that changed my, well, the way I was raised and what I became. Uh, and then it's more like when you realize that, and you really have to realize about like that difference that is on the table. I mean, and what I have been reading that it's really nice is also everything that we have been changing to have a spot in the economy we have become very male, you know, and that shouldn't happen. And that's something like probably I have became very male in terms like how I talk, or if I loud and all that part, and that shouldn't be, because at the end it's like if you try to figure out like that we really can create something together, is like bringing the best part of both of three, or because you have like from all different diversity. No, it's not just men and women. I mean, like, and what you have to bring to the table is absolutely a different point of view. I mean, I did my MBA at IE in Spain, and one of the things is when they created a group with you, they have someone from India, from China, from Latin America, from Germany, and the point of view of everyone was amazing, different. It's like, wow, I never thought like that before. Wow, that's interesting what you're saying, no? So, and that's what happens also in the companies when you are related with people from different backgrounds of diversity, and that's why you have better numbers, and that's why you get better results. Because if we are like three people that think absolutely the same and just cheering up, saying like, "Oh, Patricia, how brilliant you are," it's well, it's pointless.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's so
those are
true.
the things that you have to start to think about.
Right. But when it comes to, a women also confidently pitching about her business or maybe about a fund that she's raising, sometimes the targets that she mentions are taken to be too ambitious by other people in the room, and when the same targets are being spoken about by a male counterpart, it's taken very seriously. So why is it that sometimes the color of the message just becomes different when a woman is speaking or talking about her business?
I would tell you, like, I think again, like it's like the chemistry, and that's the importance that are more women having the money and the decision to make the investments. Because I mean, in the mind of a man, and that happens a lot, is like if I don't know how old you are, but okay, let's say 30, and you come and tell me I'm to a picture, I don't know, would be like, oh, she's going to get married soon, and she is going to have kids. And that will be a problem because she's going to leave the company, and who's going to be in charge of the company. In my case, they would say, like, oh, how old are your kids? Oh, and what if they get sick? So those are the things those are the bias that they have. And that's like the silence bias that most of the guys have in their mind, no?
But is there,
And
yeah,
the people have.
yeah, but is there any way in which women can destroy that notion by talking ambitiously and saying that, okay, fine, this is the point where I am at, and I know what is more important for me, how to balance things out, and yet, get the investors' confidence or the buy in? Is there a way in which we can reverse flip this whole issue? Because a bias in the mind cannot change so easily, but an action on the opposite side can. So, do you have anything that women can instead do to present their case more strongly?
I do honestly believe that we have to be more prepared. I mean, and that happens. I mean, like, you have one shot, you have to be very well prepared. And the numbers and the thing and the confident, and because you are competing, what we were saying, with one person and with the bias of that person. Mention also that bias is also good, because normally they will be like, woof. If you mention to them like, okay, I'm doing this, and yes, probably I have someone that helped me, or I am married and he's also committed to do 50-50%. So bring the things to the table, and not just like not talking as if it didn't exist, because it exists. No, so I think, but I will tell you something. I'm doing right now a course that it's like leadership for board of directors for women. And someone was asking always, like, oh, how come we're doing this course? And I'm sure, like most of the guys that are in the board of directors in Latin America, they haven't done this. Yes, it's true. And absolutely true. I mean, like, we are like very prepared than the others. But at the end, it's like, okay, but if we're going to start to be more women in board of directors, we have to come and be by far well better prepared than the guys. Two, just to do what I'm telling you, like just to lower that part of and even the same woman, when I talk to women, they are like, oh, it's like working with women is so difficult. That's not true. Who said that? Oh, women really can kill themselves for something. That's also not true. Who
Yeah.
said that? No? I mean, I can have a bad day. And of course, I can have a bad day. You can have a bad day. I can have a fight with a woman. And I can have a fight with a man or with another diversity person. I can have a fight because it happened. But it's not like, so those are like myths or things that are like in the mind of everyone that you have to start to stop. And that micromachismus that we call it also, we are women, we have to stop too. Like that's that's the typical micromachismus that women, they're like so difficult. Who told you that?
Mm.
Don't you think you're also difficult? I mean, everyone is difficult.
Yeah.
We're all made different. So I believe like we could be all, we can be pretty difficult.
Mm.
So it's like attacking that point. So at least that person will never say that again.
Yeah. Right. Like facing it right from the face and not like going behind crying about it or thinking how could you have done differently. And that is also part of preparation, like you mentioned. It's not just about the work, but also preparing on the emotional aspects and foreseeing what could happen and role playing it in a certain way that okay, this is how I will tackle it.
Absolutely. And be well prepared. I
Yeah.
mean, and that's for men and for women. I mean, you have one shot as entrepreneur. You have one shot with an investor. Me as fund manager, I also have one shot with an investor. So be prepared, and of course do your job. Like try to figure out how to find the chemistry with that person, because relationships and all the part of getting money from another person, it's about trust. No, so who are you going to trust more?
Yeah. But how is
And
it
that,
for you? Yeah, yeah, sorry, continue.
no, you were asking how is it what?
Yeah, how is it that you raised your own fund? Because we were on this page that how equally it is difficult for an entrepreneur plus a women GP to raise a fund of her own from people and take money out of their pockets and trust them with their money in your fund. So how did you do that initially? Now that you are on your second fund, of course, it might be easier than before. But how was it in the first go?
No, in the first one, it was really, really, really difficult. And it's always difficult. I think raising funds is always difficult. But what I created the strategy is, I mean, I wanted to get $10 million and I got four. And I was like, okay, I could be forever and ever trying to raise the 10 million. I couldn't. So let's do a microfund. The people that trusted me were more like in terms of business people that they were like, oh, I think like something interesting is happening in that industry. I think like really I want also to learn. One of my friends who is like my investor in both funds, he always says like we can make mistakes by investing, and that happens. But I'm sure like you're not going to take the money somewhere or do something wrong with the money. So that's when it's like trust. Uh, so and what we decided to do is like okay, do it like in a very um I mean like smaller size. So that was $4 million, but very well invested, very well managed, and then we have an amazing track record. So And I also think about it like you have to have a competitive advantage, and always think about like what is your competitive advantage. You
What
know,
was yours?
no, at that moment I thought like it was like the investors that I have, and me as being like, and I will tell you something. Me as being a woman is easier to talk to the male entrepreneurs, and probably because the way I talk to them kind of figure it out. Probably I being more maternal, they will talk to me and they will be like more like, oh yes, we have a huge problem. I really want to cry. I really destroy. I feel so lonely. I feel that my world just is in pieces. Probably that's something that they would not tell a guy that come in a suit and saying like, okay, tell me about your revenue, tell me about your gross margin. So how are we growing? Why are you not growing faster? Why are you not doing? So those are the things that you have to. And of course, I ask the same things. Like because of course I manage money, so I'm very into the numbers. But at the same time, you have to have the other part, and it's like, okay, so how are you feeling? How can I help you? How can we do this together? I'm part of your team. I understand that you fell down and you just have to get up. So those are that's what I was telling you, like try not to become a man in terms of the same skills. Be truly on like what you are, and try to find from there like what you want to do, or your competitive advantage.
Yeah, but when it comes to pitching for a fund, what all do you speak about? If I'm just asking from a perspective, if somebody who's wanting to raise a fund of their own or is an investor, they would be getting some cues from you.
You have to be absolutely clear why your investment thesis. The
Mm.
investment thesis is like why, and really put it together like I'm doing this because of that. When I started this second investment thesis, it's like, as I mentioned to you, I saw there is this gap. I want to solve this gap. I want to invest in these companies. I think I will have that. The second, the team. Who is your team? And what is like unique thoughts that brings like, because the team is everything. I mean, the investment team is everything. So in our case, for example, I have an entrepreneur. So it's like amazing because he has another point of view absolutely different than mine. And he has been there and he has been very successful. And also we have made mistakes. Then the another person has been doing impact investing. So we really are taking serious what we're saying about the gender lens, no? So we're measuring like in this way and then the other way. So I would say like the team, like bring all the team together. It's the most difficult part, but it's a very important part. And then beside of the team is like your investment thesis. And from your investment thesis, you have to get the competitive advantage, because that's, as an entrepreneur in life, in everything. I mean, when you are applying for a job, you can go there and you will tell like, yes, and I was very good in my class, and I am very good, and I have experience and that. Okay, but what makes you like getting the job? One sentence. Why?
Yeah.
And that's what you have to be prepared.
Is it very similar to pitching for fundraising as an entrepreneur? Because it sounded like that.
It is. It is because you have in one place you have an investment thesis. In the second part, you have a product. One thing, like in both types, you are solving a problem. Because, and what's this problem they're solving in fund managers? Well, you're investing in companies that are solving the problem. You have to have a team, because the execution. has to be absolutely good. You have to make money. How are you going to make money? So it's very similar.
How was it that you sourced your first deal, and did it turn out to be a good one for you, or you learned it over the go while investing in many companies and then finding out a gem from them?
No, I didn't get that one. Sorry.
When you started your first fund, you said it was difficult to raise funds, but once you did, and once you started investing into companies, how was it that you sourced your first few deals? And did those deals give you the right kind of fruits that you were expecting? If not, what were the learnings from them, and how did you use those learnings to invest in the right gems that you have been looking for?
Yeah. So what it started is like everyone was saying like, okay, the investment thesis was to invest in early stage tech companies that were like able to scale in Latin America. And for me, I was like, okay, if you want to scale in Latin America, you really have to solve a problem. And that's we were like very, very like double clicking in what was the problem that they were solving, like what was like again like their competitive advantage, what is what they were doing unique, and that's how like from 8 companies we have 5, so we made 3 mistakes. If you ask me about those mistakes, they were very early stage, and probably for very early stage the investment thesis should be different. For example, like investing less money and do more like the spread and pray. You could do that. In terms of us, we are more like hands on. I believe in that part of being hands on, that like the companies are going to pivot in terms of product, in terms of market, in terms of pricing, in terms of everything. I mean, like where you invest is not like what is going to happen. That never happens. So that's the importance of the team, and in a way that's important to have a product, because when you have the product, at least you know like what you're going to sell for our investment thesis. So from our point, we were like really, really, really into the end customer, what you were solving for to the end customer. Like in terms of we invested in an ed tech that is like what we did the the sell, the exit. And it was very clear for us, like people in Latin America, they were going to universities, like the normal education. They were spending money, they were spending time, they were asking for a loan. So it's like everything a huge effort that you're making from your point, and then you're not getting any job, no? Or if you are like really doing like your postgraduate, they were doing all these certificates, it's again the same thing, and they are not getting any better in the job. So what happening there? There was like a misunderstanding or conception between what they were teaching in the universities and what the market was asking for skills for people to be hired. And that's something that all these education platforms were solving, and very fast, and 1/3 of the what the people were spending. So when people start to see like, okay, if I go and study in Platzi for 12 months and I double my salary, wow, that's what you're studying for, no? Or I studied in Platzi, I do this effort, and then I get the job. Wow, that is what I really wanted, because we're third world countries. I mean, like unemployment is huge. So if you're spending money or investing, how you call it, like investing money in education, well, we really need to be a good investment, return investment. Otherwise, it's not a good investment. So those are the things like we started like to really understand and to really be absolutely aware about where to invest, and that's what we're doing in the second one too.
Got it. And when it comes to promoter-led startups, what are some of the red flags that you observe in the early stages or in the late stages that founders make, which just is not something that you can compromise on. It's like something that will just take you off.
I would say, well, like worldwide change, and it's so easy to say, like for the past 3 years, the mistake that was made, but that part, and I always think like each region is different. Each region has the same, their own difficulties. So trying to copy everything from Silicon Valley, I think like that's one of the huge mistakes. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, it worked there. You have plenty of money there, or you have absolutely a different market. For example, in Latin America, I always said like there is no space for a nice to have. I mean, because we have like wealthy people are only 5%. So you have to go to a middle class. So a middle class is solving problems. It's not a nice to have. So that's my first part that I am like, okay. But from my point of view, like the first and very basic, stupid mistake is not being prepared. It's not knowing like the market. It's not, and if you're saying like you're solving a problem, is a real problem, no? Not like the problem or of I don't know. No, I everyone has a pet right now, and so that thing like I'm solving the problem for being in a restaurant and do the pet ballet. No, I mean like that's not a problem.
Yeah, but when you say real problem, how do you define that problem? What are some of the metrics that a founder can take into consideration to speak about it?
I would say like the size of the industry, the size of the market, and when you think like a problem is like what I was telling you in Platzi, in general, like okay, really this is happening. This is a more than greater than $1 billion industry. This is happening all in Latin America. The this is an opportunity because what was a problem turned out to be like also an opportunity in terms of came like the pandemic, and something that happened to Latin America is like remote jobs are like wow, happening a lot that didn't happen before. And what was going on with India normally, that like outsourcing in India for all these software companies was very common for you, was something that was not very common in Latin America. And we have the same time zone, or if we don't have the same one, we have like the difference 2 to 3 hours, which is another advantage for Latin America. So let's try to get more people being prepared to get those jobs from the US and being more competitive. So it's more like plain vanilla in terms of like another one is like telemedicine. Telemedicine, everyone was saying like, oh no, you have to go to a doctor, and you're like, I mean, it's not online or offline. It's not something that you have to say like, uh, is like this or is like the other way around. No, what you have to think about is it is well, I mean, it's like how are you solving the problem through technology? So basically, the part of in worldwide, the health sector is in bankruptcy worldwide. It costs a lot to the government. It's something that most of the country they have like a very bad service, no? So it's like a huge problem. And then you are like through technology, what can you do through technology? Okay, starting from the triage, not asking the same thing 3 times to the same person. And at the end, what also can be done, like the triage, like with good technology, you can be absolutely more um, accurate than just the doctor on his own doing everything. And then the other part is like, okay, what about like when you're giving support of the treatment? It's also that you could do it like uh, through technology. So those are the things that make sense for all of us. Like in this company that we invested, we realized that the people, when they are not in front of a doctor, they are by far more open and they ask many other things, you know. And in terms of sexual relations, that it's something like, I don't know, early, well, like teenagers or something, like are afraid to talk to a doctor, or are like feel like, you know, like they don't want to talk. When they do it like through a phone or through WhatsApp, they really ask what they don't know.
Yeah.
So those are the things that you realize about, like it's very interesting how it can help to change the world.
Got it. And when it comes to pitching, many people go around the bush. They beat around the bush. They don't come to the point easily. While an investor's attention is only like for a couple of seconds, and you really get interested in their pitch in that first few minutes of what they're saying. So, how is it that you really would like a pitch to be when it comes to both the presentation plus the speaking part?
I think like the industry, the product, the problem solving, the team, and the unit economics. Because you can't imagine how many times I am like already listening to entrepreneurs, and after 5 minutes, I still don't know what the product is. Yeah, and they still talking and talking, and I'm like, okay, I didn't get it. So it's like what you're selling. I mean, like this is telemedicine that will solve ta 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 ta. Then, so they put you at once in what you're doing, no? Then, like the industry, how big it is, what is the problem that you're solving, how are you solving? Again, what is your competitive advantage? The team, who are you going to do it with? And how are you going to make money?
Yeah. Do you prefer solo women founders or you want them to have a co-founder, be it a female or a male?
No, I think like I do not prefer. I mean, like we would love to see it's good teams. I mean, if they are like five women and they complement each other, more than happy. You know, or in terms of, well, I as I mentioned, I think like the mixed team is nice. You know, like the diversified team. Like I have like one from, I don't know, whatever it happens, it's not only women and men, but that they need to complement each other. That's the important part.
Yeah. And every year lakhs and lakhs of new startups are being formed, but only thousands or maybe hundreds of them just get successful. So what is it really that takes you off the ground, but then really doesn't let you go ahead? What happens in your portfolio company sometimes that they're going all smooth, but they take a U-turn and then it's a path to failure. What is it that goes missing?
I think at one point, I think like the entrepreneurs started to think only about raising money and not execution. And I think like right now we are like very much about, we need to be very, very good at executing money, executing, you know, and really being very conscious about how to spend the money. Uh, from my experience, I have seen like they were like, I don't know, I have 130 developers, so we can try many different things and see how it goes. And they do not realize that the 130 developers, they cost money. So it's not like that part of proving is not costing me anything. No, it's costing you. So I think like right now the part of executing is very important. And what I have seen also, that it's very, 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 very important, is um, they are not conscious about the importance and the commitment that they have with the investors. And we saw it last week with this huge news that you know, everyone became like, oh, we're very friendly entrepreneurs, and I'm very friendly. But one thing is being friendly, and another thing is like the commitments that I have with my investors and that the companies have with me. So reporting is very important. And I will always say that because, and reporting makes you clear mind. You know, when you start writing something, it's when you are like, oh my God, yes. I mean, because when we talk, and it doesn't matter what we talk. When you start writing is when you realize, like, wow, we have a problem here. Oh, look at the numbers. Probably this should be double click here again. No? So I think like we changed from a past that the past 4 years everyone was raising money and hyper growth without concern about anything else. Right now, it's like keep going, keep growing, because if you're really solving a problem or if you really have a market, you will be able to grow, but do it in a conscious way and executing properly. And thirdly, uh, the moment that you get an investor is the moment that you get responsibility with the third person, and that's important to do the reporting and to do that part, because we're starting to see a lot that you really have to do it.
Yeah, a lot of frauds and startup scandals have happened because there was lack of reporting to investors. But if I have to ask you, what's the timeline as to how often should a founder keep their investors in check of what's happening?
But it's at the end, it's the same thing. Like, how often do you have to check your company and start to think to you go right, and you go and you're raising money, and then you're deploying the capital and you are like in product, in marketing and stuff. How often do you think you sit down and have to start to realize about how much the expenditure you're doing in marketing and how is it turning into income? I think you have to do it like once a week, no? Because
Yeah.
then you will realize like if you're spending the money minimum once a week. Okay. So getting the report to the investors quarterly in a good part, I think like it's the best. So it's
Yeah.
not that much. It's not like we're asking once a week or every day. It's more like, okay, it's like particularly you can do it like quarterly, but then
Hmm.
be conscious about like what quarterly is and how it should be.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Also, you invest a lot in disruptive companies. So, what is disruption really for you? Because it has a broader meaning than what people think it is. So, what is it for you as an investor?
I think it's more according to the region, because what you're saying, I mean, disrupted in Silicon Valley would be like a car to the moon. I mean, here it's like, wow, we do not have that. For my point of view, it's more like, okay, how do we do things different? And again, solving a problem. So, what is the different part? And disruptive is doing something different that really it's solving a problem here. That's from us, like our point of view.
Yeah, that's like the plain vanilla definition of it. Disruption meaning solving a real world market problem. That's it. Not creating another moon, Mars, Jupiter, whatever it is. Yeah, got it.
Definitely.
Yeah, you also invest in sustainability, but when we speak of ESG, how do you really measure impact? That's my question number one. And number two is that sometimes the G aspect of ESG really goes missing. You don't see governance aspects being met in most of the companies, and that's where that's the first step of failure for most of the startups, and they don't realize it coming. So how is it that you really look into those two things?
Okay. So first, like measuring impact is one of the challenges that we're all facing worldwide. I have been like in a lot of uh, speeches and all that part because we have not I mean I think it's something new. It's something like because it's so diverse between industries, it's so difficult to measure. You know, I mean, like in terms of financial, we know revenue, we all know EBITDA, we all know gross margin, we all know those things, no? I mean, like those things, you know it. So uh, I think like we are missing that part. What we are trying to do is, of course, by theory of change, and each of the startups where we invest, we start to look at it and how we are going to measure and what is we are going to measure. If it's like employees or what we're going to measure is like the end customers because you're solving something to them. So I think like it's pretty difficult is to have one across like the whole industry. That's going to be very difficult. Um, so that's it. That's the first thing that I that's a challenge worldwide, and we have been talking about that in all the forums and summits and all that, like how we can start like to having that across. In terms of governments that you were saying, like ESG, I think like most of the companies and most of the investors, I mean, like it's coming from our investors to the funds and from the funds to the startups or to the companies. And governments is something that it's true. And we have to start to apply the best uh, politics, you know, like the best policies, like making them aware about like, okay, how you have to structure your board of directors. If you have a sounding board, how you should structure them, how often you should meet, the reporting that we were talking about, how it has to be the reporting. If you have new clients, like know your clients, anti-money laundering, all that part that and that's something that with EWA we are like very much like doing it and promoting it, because when we invest in the companies, they are like too early that they don't have anything like this. And that's our commitment that they start like of course not having something like, I don't know, Coca-Cola, because everyone thinks like, oh, this is so huge and so much work and so difficult that's like a multinational will do. And you're like, yes, of course, I mean, like they have like something like this big, but you can start like doing it and applying best practices just by doing that.
Got it. And but I'm sure that you must have invested in some impact based companies, so how are you measuring their returns?
No, we haven't invested already
Okay.
in that sector. We still have to do it, but we haven't.
Yeah, maybe it'll be very interesting to watch how will you be measuring it. Like you said, it's a very debatable question, and many people are discussing it over and over in different summits and conferences. So the answer might only come once we invest into a company like that. And that also may
Absolutely.
be one of the reasons why you didn't invest yet.
No, I haven't. I mean, like what we did is like the first fund, as I mentioned to you. Now we're raising the second fund, and in the second fund, we are like investing into fintechs. One could be like more like it's an innovated products for the construction industry, trying to solve the problems about like the use of plastic, the only use of plastic, you know, like one use of plastic.
Yeah.
So, but we're still like not invested. That would be one that you would like. So I will tell you when we invest, like how are we going to start to measure like the impact in that one.
Yes, the day I see that on your website coming in, I'm gonna ping you. Like, please tell me how did it happen? Yeah, but
Perfect. I will let you know.
yes. Also, if you could just give us a brief of what check sizes do you offer to companies, what sectors do you come in, what stage, just for a roundup for the founders who might be listening to the interview.
Sure. So we invest in Latin America. That's one of the things that we do. Is early stage tech companies, meaning that they have a minimum value product, that they have a market fit and clients. That's basically for us how we measure like the minimum value product that solves socioeconomical problems. We like very much education, health sector, financial services, retail, and ag tech. Uh, all Latin America except for Brazil. Our checks are more like around 500,000 to 700,000.
Hmm.
Those are like, and basically it's more like a pre-series A. That's our sweet spot.
Got it. Since you come in at such early stages, there is heavy risk associated with the startup. So, what kind of terms do you negotiate as an investor to be put in it to the term sheet? And do you always get the founders on the same page as you do?
We try to do it. I mean, like we basically it's early stage. We have and we enjoy very much co-investing with other investors. The reason for that is we believe in the power of bringing more people together. Is the more value added that you can generate to the company and to everything. So those are the things. We normally get board of directors, but what we have learned is like as from the beginning I told you this is something that it's about people skills. So as long as you are like really creating value to the company, they will come to you too. So those are like the things that we do with EWA, and we create value with them across our network, across our like how we can help them to solve problems, raising money, the part of the government that we were talking about, like okay, what are we missing here, and how are we going to do it? So that's something that we normally create. I think like what is also good in Latin America, it's like it takes time to close a deal. So, and I also think like it takes time to build a relationship, no? So since it takes time, it's also like you learn how the other part is. And that's something that I do not believe in that part that, oh, the the round is open and it closes in 5 hours. Because in 5 hours you don't know the person. And this is a long-term relationship. So and it's about commitment. So I think like it's by far more important like having like a good relationship and having like the well the positions like very clear
Mm.
and what where and how we can add value and what are you going to commit to.
Yeah, but if I were to ask you some 4 5 terms that you have in the term sheet, what would those be? Because many of our audience are unaware of these terms, so would like to hear it from you.
Don't. No, basically what I told you before. I mean, like the don'ts are like
No, not the don'ts, the terms.
you have to be aware. What's
Like the
that
terms,
I didn't get?
what kind of terms do you put in a term sheet? Like the preemptive right, anti-dilution, liquidity preference. What are some of those 4 5 things that you see?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it changed with the time. So right now we have like yes an anti-dilution policy, and basically because what we are seeing about like the difference between the the, um, the valuations, you know. So in terms of the valuations, you have seen how much they have dropped, and you
Yeah.
have seen what is happening. So basically, for us, that part is important. Um, board seat that I was telling you, reporting that I was telling you, information rights that we think it's very important, the closure, the close that the maintenance for the entrepreneur to be in the company until, I mean, like, we leave almost.
Is that the
Um,
lock-in period?
is it what?
Is it the lock-in period for the founder to not sell their
Yeah,
stake?
yeah. Yes, that's the lucky bidder.
Okay.
Exactly.
How much do you prefer it to be?
Eh,
5 years or lesser than that?
it's interesting. I think like at least 3 years, you know,
Yeah.
at least 3 years because what we were saying, I mean, you're investing in entrepreneur. So it's like he has to do his jobs and that's like the part that we believe in. Well, drag along, tag along, that's normal. And those are
Got
not
it.
much.
Got it. And how did this name come up of your fund, which is EWA Capital?
EWA comes from the Indians here in Colombia, that it's like a part of Arawaco, which is an Indian language, and it's like mother.
Oh,
Well, it's like kind of, it's not mother, mother, it's like where everything is like comes from.
yeah.
And I don't know if you remember Avatar, the movie.
Yes, yes, I do.
They also mention EWA as
Right.
exactly.
That's true. Wow. But you should put up a story of how the name came up on your website. It will be very interesting for people who
Ah,
want it. Yeah.
that's nice. Good idea. I will do that.
Yeah.
I will do
You should
that.
also put up a storyline of
Uh
how you
huh.
exited your first fund and now are running this. It's very inspiring for founders who would, come onto your website and see about your portfolios. Just gives them a boost.
Okay, I will do that too. I will take it into account.
Yeah.
Okay, and thank you
Yeah.
so much for the invitation.
Cool. Thanks for your time.
You take
Bye.
care. Bye.